They shared one thing with Poland, which is that during the Great War, you could say that its core cadre had been fighting on the side of the Austro-Hungarian army, just as the Polish legions under Józef Piłsudski. And there you had the first unit of the Sich riflemen. So you could say that the commanders of that unit, they were the ones that later would be building the core of this future Ukrainian People's Republic army. However, most of the soldiers were soldiers who had previously fought in the army of the Tsar. Now that Ukraine had been liberated, we must remember that the part which today is Ukraine and was under Austro-Hungarian rule before the First World War was only that tiny part of Galicia. 95% or so of what is today Ukrainian territory was part of the Russian Empire before the First World War. And therefore, naturally, most of the soldiers were still had previously served in the Tsarist army. However, the core had this slight Galician and Austro-Hungarian element. However, there was another Galician army which was serving under a different state, also a Ukrainian state, but a different one, the Western Ukrainian People's Republic, which had been created further to the west and which did not see the Soviets in Moscow and St. Petersburg as their main enemy. Instead, they were concerned with the reborn Polish state, which naturally laid claims to the city of Lviv and its surroundings, because in Poland it was known as Lwów and had been part of the Polish First Republic since the 14th century. Therefore, the Western Ukrainian People's Republic quickly tried to take control of Lviv, got into a war with Poland, a war which it lost. However, the Ukrainian People's Republic was fighting its own war with the Soviets, and when things started going poorly in 1919, in the fall of 1919, they started negotiating with the Poles. It took some time, and it was first really in the spring of 1920 that things changed. In April, Józef Piłsudski and Semyon Petlura signed the Warsaw Treaty. The two states became allied, and now the Poles started in April building up this unit that had previously served in the Ukrainian People's Republic, but now received extra support from Poland. And then finally it was moved to the city of Berdychiv in Ukraine, where they received their final training. They received their flag from Petlura, and they were finally ready to go to battle. So together with the Poles, in May, early May 1920, they started the drive really towards Kiev. Even in late April, the battles had already started, but they really picked up pace and they started nearing Kiev in early May. On May 8th, they had already reached the outskirts of Kiev, and quickly the Bolsheviks realized that it was time to withdraw. They didn't want to fight a pitched battle in front of the city nor inside the city. They withdrew, the Poles entered, and together with them the Ukrainians. They put on quite a big show down the main street of Kiev, the Chreszchatyk. You had these long rows, these columns of cavalry and infantry armies marching, where you had the Poles, but also for the Poles it was important that the Ukrainians were playing the main role here, as the Poles wanted to prove to the Ukrainians that they came here as allies to make sure that they would throw out the Soviet Red Army and make it possible for an independent Ukrainian state to be created there, which would naturally be allied with Poland, but however, it would be administered and it would be independent and only bound to Poland in a military alliance. Poland was, out of selfish interest here, of course, interested in creating some form of buffer against the Soviet state. So having an independent Ukraine, which had its own military forces, would be beneficial. During this parade, the Poles naturally still made up the bulk of the forces that entered the city, but the Ukrainians were put, you could say, on the prime spot, also to impress the local population, to make sure that they would be willing to cast their lot behind the Poles and not the Soviet Red Army that had just left the city. They made sure to walk up this main street, turn around through some back streets, and then the same units would come marching up again to give the impression of the army entering the city being larger than it actually was. The Ukrainians and the Poles, they stayed in Kiev for slightly more than a month. The 6th Division, they entered on May 8th, and they withdrew on June 9th as there was a powerful Soviet counteroffensive, which after a while actually turned into a rout very quickly. It started in June, but by August they were already nearing Warsaw. Yes.
Adam, the clock has, as always, defeated us. I'm going to have to ask you to pause just there, if I may, but we'll pick it up next time. There we are. As usual, the clock has defeated us, and Adam's had to pause almost, but not quite in mid-sentence. Fear not. If you join us next time, as we hope you will, we'll pick up the story on Poland Daily History. In the meantime, thank you for watching.